episode of Sales is Cool. Today, we're excited to bring to you Shashank Subramanian, Senior Manager, Global Sales at BrowserStack, where he's been driving revenue growth and building high-performing sales teams for over the last 5 years. Shashank brings a wealth of experience from his time at industry giants like Gartner and LinkedIn, where he's developed his approach to sales leadership and team development. He's particularly passionate about mentorship, collaboration, and how to use data in his sales strategies that deliver results. In today's conversation, we'll dive into how Shashank builds and scales high velocity sales teams, his approach to frontline management, and the leadership principles that have guided his success. Shashank, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Karthik. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. We're going to do things slightly differently. We're going to start today with some rapid fire questions
All right.
to get you warmed up. Okay. And think of these questions as the shortest versions of answers you can give.
Okay.
We'll talk about the larger, longer answers later, but think of the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
All right, you ready to go?
Okay. Yep, ready.
Okay, what's the one mistake you see most new managers make in sales?
I think the one mistake that I've seen happening many times is they forget to take off the AE hat. They're still very, they're first-time managers, but they're still thinking like AEs. So that would be one of the mistakes that I see most of.
Okay. What's the best deal coaching moment you've had?
Well, it is this might not be rapid, but it's just a moment wherein me and my AE, we'd worked on a deal with a UK government organization, and this was a good 4 to 5 month deal. We brewed it well. We did all the things that were necessary to get it to the final stage. Everything like triangulation, speaking to procurement, the negotiations, and everything. And it had come to a point wherein we'd said that we've done everything that we could. And my AE was coached throughout. It was a great experience, but at the end, it got pushed by another 2 months. And at that moment, I was like, I don't think this deal is coming in, right? But I think what my AE taught me that day was probably the conviction that she had when the deal was being built in the right way. And because the process was so good, because we had checkboxed everything, the deal came in. So I was very happy that I was wrong. But I think that was the best coaching moment because she didn't give up. The conviction was there, and the deal did come through.
Says a lot about you as a manager that you pick that moment. That's
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move to what sales book or framework that is your fallback.
From a framework perspective, the reason I choose my answer is because I was introduced to this very early in my career, and that was the challenger sales methodology, right? The framework, it tells you to challenge the customer in a way by providing him information that he needs. And then when you've given him information that he needs, you get the right to ask the questions. So in a way, it's challenging the customer to think, but after giving the information. So that is one. And one of the books that was actually given to me by my current super boss is that The Score Takes Care of Itself. It's by Bill Walsh. It's a beautiful book. Whoever wants to read it, I would highly recommend it, especially
Nice.
for first-time managers.
Lovely. Okay, what's one thing you do differently if you were starting over again as a frontline manager?
I think I would trust myself more.
Okay.
I would trust my instincts more. Uh, we if we do the right things, but we still mull over a lot of things, right? I would trust myself more. That would have saved me a lot of stress in the beginning of my career.
Lovely. So you've dealt with the rapid fire questions fairly well, Shashank.
Oh, thank
I
you.
want to now move towards a little bit of strategy, right?
Okay.
You've spent the last 5 years as a frontline manager, building frontline management success. Let's start at that point, right? How do you define a winning strategy for a new team?
I think from a strategy perspective, there are a lot of misconceptions. People I think use the word strategy pretty loose. According to me, I think it's just very simple, right? Think of it as three circles that you have, right? The first circle is going to be about understanding systems. The second circle would be driving relentless execution. And
Yep.
think of the third circle as a circle that is going around these two circles like a satellite. It's orbiting it. And that circle would be empathy.
Okay.
So this is how whenever there is something that I want to plan, these are just the three simple things that I want to bring into the conversation, right? Is it okay if we go through this in little detail?
Yeah,
This
sure.
particular part of it? Okay, cool. So I think to break it down, let's look at the first circle. If you're looking about understanding the systems, right? Broadly, I think systems are classified into two parts. One is the internal ecosystem, and second is the external ecosystem. Now, in sales, when we, a lot of sales parlance, we call the external ecosystem as the customer and the macroeconomic conditions around. But I just feel that that ecosystem, there are a lot of uncontrollables over there, right? The only controllable I have over there is understanding the ICP of my customer. What are his challenges, right? What are his challenges that my product can solve? What are the challenges that my product can't solve? What makes my customer successful? What's in it for him, right? These are the things that I think about, when I'm looking at the external ecosystem, right? The same with the internal ecosystem. Now, the internal ecosystem can be my A's, right? The level at which they are. Is there any enablement that they need separately? Second would be in terms of my cross collaboration groups,
Yeah.
right? What makes them successful? What are their success metrics? Every organization has OKRs for its teams within, right? What are their OKRs? What makes them successful, right? I think if there is an alignment with the internal teams and my A's, we meet regularly, we understand each other, right? Because we have a connection beyond only an ask and a give, right?
Yeah.
I think people become more accountable to what the expectations are from each other, right? That helps a lot. So from my perspective, that is the internal ecosystem that I have absolute control over,
Correct.
right? Now we'll definitely go to the details of this, but from an understanding the systems perspective, I would look at these two things. The second circle that I was talking about is driving relentless execution. This is one of my favorite circles because I love process, not from a perspective that it kind of puts blinkers on me, but I think it guides me in the way I think as well. So when I talk about process, I'm talking about the absolute controllables. What is my expectation from the team in terms of activities, in terms of non-negotiables, in terms of the forecasting accuracy, in terms of the Salesforce hygiene, right? This is where I spend most of the time when I'm setting up a team, right? Because I want to bring certain standards of performance that the team must at all times go back to, and kind of that starts with me. So
Yeah.
all that I spoke to you about, I need to first check and I need to first maintain this at my own level, right? So here is where the tools come in, right? Wherein are we using some of the customer, some of the people use Outreach, some of the people use Sales Loft, depending upon the company that you are and the tools that you use, Lucia for prospecting and all of that. But there is a science to it. There
Yeah.
is a science to when an email goes out. What is the best response time for an email when when you send an email? What's the best response time, right? When are the rates the best, right? Which cultures will speak to you or are more probable to speak to you on a particular day? All this, the science part of it, you have access to, right? And this needs to be second nature, wherein I come to office. I know my manager is going to ask me about my forecast. I fix that. I know prospecting is the most important part of my day. 2 hours over there. There will be time where I have to spend on my sales, my support ticket escalations. There are going to be abrupt asks from my manager, fill this sheet, fill that sheet, but there is a system to it, right? So that system is what I constantly try and build more and more, because that is what is going to give me my discipline. And I think one, let me give you credit, it was you where you said that I think discipline outruns motivation every day of the week, right? So I think once you have that relentless execution, you will align to business cycles sooner or later. And the third circle, the empathy, right, which is orbiting around these two circles. The reason I say that is because people buy from people they like. People like to work with people they like. In all of this, expectations that the org has from the managers, the managers have from the AE, I think it's extremely important to lead with empathy. um, I think the most important thing about culture is when empathy is driven right from the top. And I think I've been lucky to work in organizations wherein empathy is at the fore of everything. So I know that was a long winding answer, Karthik, but strategy in simple is understanding the systems, driving relentless execution, and these two circles being orbited continuously by empathy.
Yeah, that's excellent, right? And lots of I think a parallel is where as a salesperson you also have the art of sales and the science of sales, right? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
you've very neatly, nicely broken it down into, let's say, the science of management, where you have these processes that you have to drive and show an example of driving, but also there is the human element, right? Where you have to lead your teams and your stakeholders, whether internal or external, with that level of empathy. So that was really nice. Not long at all. Okay, so let me ask you a different way of how you balance this, right? Early on, whether that's a new team or a new segment, how do you balance process on the one hand with a little bit of experimentation of the other?
Got it. I think experimentation, especially in a high velocity business, is the need of the hour. You need to be constantly experimenting.
Yeah,
To answer your question, I think the most important aspect would be time. When am I experimenting? Right? I would lead with that. If I'm in the beginning, and I'll just break it down in as simple sales terms as possible. If I'm towards the end of the quarter, I start getting ready for the experiments that I would run in the first week or the second week of the quarter,
understood.
right? Because if I'm running my experiments in the first or the second week of the quarter, let's say for some reason it's not successful, right? I have my time to correct it. So fail often, but fail early, right? So time also gives you another aspect, because we are selling to different markets around the world. Every quarter there is some festival or there is something happening in a different part of the world, right?
Yeah,
Then when you get into the details of it, yes, I know I can experiment better when that, let's say there is a Halloween in the states or there is a Thanksgiving in the states, right? I would rather not want to experiment too much during Easter, if I'm talking about UK and Europe, right? I would want to run my experiments definitely not during July, August, September, because most of UK and Europe is off during July, August, and September, right? And when it comes to APAC, if I'm looking at the Indian subcontinent, yes, there are various times during the year where I can experiment in terms of different kind of campaigns, whether it is a Diwali holiday or whether it is your half yearly close or anything for that matter, right? March end is big when it comes to Indian companies, right? So I look at it in a perspective that experiment definitely, but time. When are you experimenting? Is that's where the balance is.
I love that. Get your experiments in early, and time them accordingly, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay, let's talk about that circle where you focus on process, right?
yes.
And let's try and be a little more specific when it comes to how do you approach territory planning or quota setting, and pipeline coverage. How do you think of and execute some of these things?
Sure. All right. So probably I'll start with the smaller circle and then expand to the bigger circle, which is, let's say, pipeline coverage, right? I think I think if the strategy is correct, which we already discussed first, right? What we probably are going to be discussing right now is tactics. Like, what
Yeah,
do I do, right? So my assumption is that my strategy works, and then I look at my tactics in a way to as basic things as, I know that at the end of the quarter, I need to do, for an example, 500K of business, right? Now, when I want to do 500K of business, there are a few things that I need to know at the back of my mind as a frontline sales manager. One of them is going to be, what is my average deal cycle? How long does it take for my deal to close, right? Second is going to be, what's my average deal size?
yeah,
Right? How long when I sell my product, what's that sweet spot that I kind of get, and you get this data after going through various iterations of years gone by in terms of the product that you sell, which is the average deal size, right? Now when you look at these two together, you somehow get an idea in terms of the number of opportunities that I might have to close in this quarter, right? So that I have good pipeline coverage, right? So, which means that if I know my ADS, if I know my sales cycle, if I know my win rate, right? You multiply this, and probably the denominator is going to be the entire average deal cycle that I have. It actually, what it will mean and it will give me is that what are the activities that I need to do, right? Which means that if my win rate is 20%, I know that out of the 10 opportunities that I'm going to create, maybe two are going to convert. I have this metric in my head. Now, to further break it down, if I've got 10 opportunities, right, I also need to know before my opportunities how many meetings am I going to have in a week, right?
Yeah.
How many meetings my A's will need in a week for sure to come up with one or two opportunities. You keep on working backwards in terms of this. That is, opportunities will only happen if I have X number of meetings in a week. X number of meetings will only happen if I have X number of activities in a day. When you put all of these together and you combine it together, you will say that, okay, my AE definitely needs one swing deal to meet his number, because my average deal size he'll have to close 20 deals, which he does not have the time for because my quarter time is restricted, right?
Yeah.
The second point I'm going to say is that on an average, I'm going to look at my run rate deals that are going to be smaller deals, but I need it because that's going to keep, the engine running,
Yeah.
right? And the third is the activities that I have to do in a week so that my meetings are successful, or I have good meetings, right? Now you kind of put all of this together. The question that we begun with in terms of pipeline coverage, right? This entire system gives an AE certain revenue streams that he knows that he needs to hit. And then I go and internally check with my internal collaboration partner stating that, hey, now I know what to do. How much is marketing going to contribute to that? How much is my BDR team going to contribute to that? Do I need to do some webinars? And all of this, you mix it with time, you have an entire system in terms of pipeline coverage, right? So that would be the long answer to the pipeline coverage thing, but at a broken down at a tactical place. From a territory planning perspective, if I had to just say that, I think from a territory planning perspective, in my experience, having worked with mid-sized organizations or even larger organizations, when I talk about them, I'm talking about my clients, right? Um, Enterprise nature deals and everything. I feel that for a territory plan, a successful territory plan is the hardest when it comes to the velocity business. The reason is because I've got my AEs don't have 10 accounts. My AEs have 150, 200 accounts each. Now, what am I supposed to know to make that AE with 150 accounts successful? Which means that what it gives me a blueprint in terms of what my territory plan should consist. So the questions that my territory plan that I need to have before I make my territory plan is, what are the industries that give my company the most amount of business? Point number one.
Yeah.
What is the ICP that I'm selling to? Point number two, right? To make this quarter successful, what are my renewal rates going to be? What are the new products that I'm going to sell into this market that is going to give me that incremental annual commercial value? Right? All of these will constitute the territory plan. The territory plan, and one of the most important slides that also I feel should constitute a territory plan is, a territory plan should not be lengthy. A territory plan should just give me very concise information. And one of the favorite things that I go back to is the 2 by 2 matrix that I love preparing for a lot of things. The 2 by 2 matrix is very simple. One is going to be effort, and the other one is the time, right? Now, if you look at it, right, if you're looking at effort, there are some accounts where my relationships are great, right? I have established those relationships, it's great. But at the same time, you know that the processes are long drawn, it's going to take time to come through. If I map my account on this 2 by 2, if I put it on, let's say, if you go from low to high and low to high on the X and the Y axis, if there is an account that from an effort perspective it is low, time is high, I'm going to probably call it my big bet, right?
Yeah.
The same way, if I go to the right side of the quadrant where I'm still saying it is a little easy, right? But my effort is going to be also easy, right? It's going to be my home run. I don't spend too much time. If I draw this quadrant in a particular way and map all my accounts over there, I clearly know what are the accounts that are my quick wins, what are the accounts that I can put in effort. I'm ready to put in effort because I know that they will yield results. What are the accounts that are not going to help me this quarter but later down the quarter? Which means that they are my big bets. I need to keep brewing those deals, right? And and the fourth one is that it's a long shot. Probably I'm not going to spend too much time over there. I think this is very important for a particular area to know. So this is one of those important slides also that constitutes of my territory plan. And one of the most important things that the territory plan will also constitute is, what are the opportunities in that current market? What's my competition saying in that current market? Right? All of those things also will constitute my territory plan. So it's a long run process, but that's where I'll land.
And how often do you revisit this territory plan? Is it at the beginning of the year when you're setting quota, or do you have a look at it every quarter? How often do you revisit this territory
Right.
plan?
Great question. The reason I say that is it's going to be different depending upon what kind of sales you are in, right?
Yeah.
For instance, if you are an enterprise nature, you have the ability to prepare your territory plan right at the beginning of the year and say that this is my blueprint, right? However, if you take the velocity business, we've had examples wherein my AE and me would visit the territory plan and make it a work in progress document in every one on one that we do every week. So, what's important is that the first territory plan that you make, we keep that static. That's a different copy. And then we keep working on a territory plan week on week. We keep moving those parts here and there, right? Because we may have some wins, we're going to have some losses. Some of the deals that you think that you are definitely going to win, you don't win. But
Yeah.
then there is a windfall deal that comes in, right? There are reasons why it comes in as well, right? So you keep this territory plan document a complete work in progress, and when the quarter gets over, you just compare the first document to the last document and you see where you started and where you won. And I feel the better thing, the AE becomes better and better is when the first document and the last two document don't have too many changes, which means that my AE is in control of his business. It is a document that legit works. So yeah, so to answer your question, we do it on a week basis because currently I'm looking at velocity business.
And you're saying that that would be different from for a larger enterprise business where businesses and understanding of ICPs are slightly more.
It's a lengthier process. That's the only reason I say it.
Yeah,
I definitely need to go back to my territory plan time and time again. But in terms of how many iterations or how many things change, that would be a little lesser in enterprise, unless you've
understood.
got everything wrong at the beginning. Yeah.
Understood. And I've heard you mention, a couple of times, right? Your best coaching moment was when your rep told you that she had more conviction.
Yeah.
You also talked about one-on-ones.
Yeah.
What's your lens on hiring, right? What are the must-haves when you are building from scratch, for example, a team? How do you go about hiring that team?
This question cannot come at a better time. I have for the past 7 months on an average done 2 interviews a day. So I've easily met around, I think, 120 candidates, right? Because currently we're expanding our team. I think it's the most important. The reason I spend close to an hour, like half an hour reduce close an hour every day, is because that is going to lay the foundation of what we are trying to build, or that is going to lay the foundation for the first question, that is the winning strategy question, right? How do you do it? It's going to lay the foundation for that. Many a times, I think hiring is a process that sometimes if you really do it, I feel if you really are invested in hiring, I think after a call I need to feel a little okay, that was a long conversation, but I kind of need to feel a little spent after a
Yeah, yeah,
conversation, because then I feel that I've invested in the person who sits in front of me, right?
yeah,
Hiring from my perspective is very important. One of the few things that I've done is I consciously, if I'm building my own team, right, I consciously try and not hire people who give you the same ideas, who are similar in nature, who have come from a similar kind of a background, right? The moment that happens, I don't see anyone adding anything new to the business that we've already set. What are you bringing different to the table is one of my most favorite questions that I try to get an answer to during an interview, right? Is the guy who is joining our organization, is he a culture fit? Is there something glaringly wrong that I see it as a red flag? Which is why in the hiring process as well, and I love my company for this. Sure, your hiring manager will have a role. Sure, you're going to have a case study role where you're going to explain your sales methodologies. But a very important decision maker in all of this is also going to be HR. In addition to my super boss, who's also going to check for culture, HR plays a very important role because HR, I feel, understands the culture fabric better. And many a times we get and we receive feedback from HR stating that these are the red flags that we see, right? And we take that feedback very seriously, right?
understood.
So that part is really going to be important to us. And because we are a large team and the team is basis velocity, we do have certain non-negotiables on the job requisition that we pass on. Is that a hard no? Absolutely not, right? Because we have this iterative process going on with the recruiters time and again, wherein they will pass on feedback to us stating that, Shashank, these two things are not there, but here is why we think it's a great fit.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time over there, but that helps us. So my lens on hiring is that probably the most important investment that I do during the day is to look at the kind of people that we are bringing into the organization.
That's interesting, and I think and that's a lesson. I think we learned together, right, in Gartner, and you did in LinkedIn. People make great uh, territories. People make great years. People make great companies. So I'll ask this question, and we've got a lot of people who are listening in, who are young salespeople looking to make their career, right? If I was a young rep looking to work with BrowserStack, what should I have in my CV or in my personality, or what should I bring to that interview that gets me the job at BrowserStack?
First, right? Definitely an updated LinkedIn profile for sure, right? That's point number one. Because when I'm stepping into an interview, right, usually do it the previous, probably an hour early, or if you don't have the time, the previous day, figure out who is the personality that I'm talking to,
Yeah,
right? For instance, as you mentioned that, let's say you're the candidate. Okay, who is Karthik as a person, right? Is Karthik socially present, right? Does he post or does he interact with LinkedIn on a day-to-day basis? These are LinkedIn has made it so easy. These are things that you get to know in terms of
yeah,
the activities that a person does on a particular day. Also, I'm not saying CVs are not important, but let's say from a hygiene factor, look at the CV as well, right? Long CVs, no one has the time. If I am doing 100 interviews over the past 7 months or something like that, unless you bounce out of your CV and you tell me this is who I am, the CV is going to be just a Word document with a lot of words on it.
yeah.
It's no fun, right? Hygiene part, keep it simple. And everything, I always say this, everything on the CV, if someone is putting something on a CV, just ask yourself why, or ask yourself the most important question, so what? Quantify things on your CV, because those are the things. If you say 164%, it stands out definitely. Or if you say I did this and it helped my customer save X amount of hours. Great point to put on a CV, because you're actually telling me how you did that. Great, right? That's right. So this is about the CV and the LinkedIn. Secondly, sometimes I do find it very surprising that if you're not able to communicate in layman's language, right? What is the value proposition of BrowserStack? When you're actually interviewing for the company, it kind of tells me that maybe you're not too serious. Maybe I don't want a technical answer, but I just want a layman's answer in terms of what does BrowserStack solve for the world at large. That one, right? And I think thought process is something that should be crystal clear. You may not have all the answers in a case study, but those one or two things, if you bring out where probably no one else has told me that before, I think that just kind of stands. And I have a kind of a habit that if I like the interview, before the interview ends, I'll tell the person that I'm moving you to the next round, and you're going to meet so and so person, right? Because
Okay.
it's great. And one of the most important things that I have started doing probably for the past 1 year is I ask them a question stating that if I had to speak to your ex or current boss, and if I ask him what is the one thing that Karthik needs to work upon, what would he say? And so many times that particular answer gives an insight into the person that you're actually talking to, right?
Yeah.
Because now people are ready. What is your weakness? There is an answer to it, right? There is
Right.
a well structured, defined answer to it. But this kind of, oh, okay, it makes the person think about what to answer. But many a times you receive the truth, because I
Yeah.
think from human psychology wise, I'm okay to, it's easier for me to say something that is not true this way, but difficult stating that, oh, that person will say this, because the onus is on that person. So context, yeah.
Yeah, and if you were to ask that question, my manager would say definitely learn to speak a lot less in team meeting, and which is why now I'm a podcast host. There you go.
Actually, Karthik,
Perfect.
my manager, I don't, you also, but my manager, at least my current one, has said that use less of hands. I do. Yeah, it's that. But yeah. It's a hard habit to
Awesome.
do. Yeah.
No, and that's great, right? I think it just gives people an insight on how to present themselves, how hard it is, right, to interview. And you're competing now um, with at least 20, 30 people for that one role.
Yeah.
I think bringing your authentic self. I think a lot of what you are saying is bring a lot of authenticity, and have a point of view that is not rehearsed or not GPT. Have a
Oh,
unique point of view.
absolutely. 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 I think the ChatGPT is great. AI models are great. But I just think that it should not kill your curiosity. I think there is so much more fun reading a book, short book, long book, whatever that is, right? Than getting a synopsis stating that this is what the book is about. I think I would probably think of, I love that one link takes me to 10 links, and those 10 links make it even more interesting. And it's that, I think the curiosity, I think that should never stop.
Yeah,
Because I think ready-made answers give you what you want. It's great. You have your aha moment. You will utilize it for the task at hand, but I don't think that registers because you've not learned it the right way. It's
yeah,
information that's thrown at you. That's it. Yeah,
yeah. And if everyone's saying the same thing, then you stop listening, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move to a little bit of execution, right?
Sure.
And what I want you to explain to us is how do you run your weekly rhythms? Whether they're one-on-one reviews, pipeline, team stand-ups. How do you run all of these different meetings to maybe drive accountability without micromanaging your team?
Got it. Since this is more to, let's say, first time, frontline managers, or people who probably just become managers, I think um, micromanagement as a word usually is said with a lot of negative connotation,
Yeah,
right? I would probably just tweak that word a little and utilize a concept that says that trust after validation, right? Lead with trust, but after validation, because that's very important. Otherwise, you're kept in the dark. You think things are happening, but they probably really won't. So that we don't get into that space as well. What I love bringing to all of this is process. Like, what do we do so that things are in order, right? So every one of my reps has a one-on-one on their calendar. The one-on-one is usually between 45 minutes and an hour. 45 minutes if the rep has spent a lot of time at BrowserStack, 1 hour if the rep probably has just joined BrowserStack, right? There is a particular format to the one-on-one. And I think in terms of expectations, managers should be absolutely clear in what format do they want to see the information that they want to see. The reason is because the frontline manager is sandwiched between management and the A's, right?
yeah,
I would say that the lesser chaos you have in your life, the better it is. And the only thing that eases chaos is there is a structure, right? So there is a format to the one-on-one. Right? If I have to break my one-on-one, the format is going to be, how do you believe you're going to change the way the week will follow. I'm not going to say what's up, how are things, right? What are the important factors I want to talk about? First is going to be the incremental business. Second is always going to be, okay, renewals. Are there any churns? Are there any risks? Right? So you break the one-on-one into, one is business updates, right? Second is you check if there is hygiene that's done, right? What's the forecasting accuracy, right? What are the commits that you can take, right? Any feedback, whether the feedback is constructive feedback that constructive criticism that you're giving, or if there is some feedback that not necessarily is pleasant, I will always make that as a part of the one-on-one, right? Never speak to a rep or tell him anything that this is not good, or in a group. No one likes that, right? So a part of the one-on-one is also going to be that these were the areas where probably improvement was needed, or this was not up to the mark. We need to start working on this. And probably one of the other things that I want to bring into this conversation is that every one-on-one should also, somewhere in 5 or 6 minutes, you check on the career part of it. Like, how is it going, right? Do you think that this is the path for you? Do you think that this path is going on according to what you planned? And I must admit that this one part is the part that sometimes I miss in every one-on-one, because you're so into the business, into what you want to close and everything. This one part is missed. I'm working on it on a day-to-day basis to try and figure out that we need to have that important part, but sometimes that gets missed. So if you are someone who is starting, or if you're a recent new manager, I would definitely say incorporate that. So now this structure, how does it benefit the AE? It benefits the AE knows that, hey, I know my manager's expectations from me, right? I know he's going to check XYZ. I know why XYZ are important to me. So preparation for that one-on-one is also going to be that much more simpler.
Nice. And let's look at these one-on-ones, right? And I think a large element of what you are doing as a frontline manager is bringing out the best in your reps. So from your perspective, what does a great coaching session look like? Can you also probably give us a real example that you've been part of? I know you talked about that deal, but how do you demonstrate a good coaching?
Okay, got it. I'll probably keep it very simple and break it down, right? I don't believe that I have reached the, like probably even half the place that a good coach is supposed to be. I'm nowhere there. I'm learning, right? I know that. But one of the things that I have understood in the basics of coaching also is going to be that in coaching, you're not going to give the answers. No, you are going to ask the right questions to the rep that makes the rep think, and they come up with the answers.
Yep.
Because if that happens, the rep is learning. If that does not happen, the rep just becomes more and more dependent on the manager. Small examples. Uh, how much discount am I supposed to give a particular deal? Right? One of the questions I'll ask back is the rep said, I think 15% is good. I'll be like, great, okay. Why not 13? Why not 17? You need to have an answer. Like, why are you putting that number? Right? So, this is a very small tactical example, but then when you extrapolate this to, let's say, a deal wide, or an account wide, or a territory planning wide, now the circle is becoming bigger and bigger. The
Yep.
thing that should never change is what kind of questions are you going to ask your rep, right? You arm your rep with methodologies. You arm your rep in a way that you try and figure out, you try and make your rep think. You give them the options, but the choosing is always going to be the rep. Sometimes the rep needs to probably stumble, the rep needs to fall a little as well, because that's going to be the moments of learning. So for my coaching philosophy is absolutely been that we will discuss it together. I call it like different names, but let's say I'll call it, one is a territory planning session. Before
Yep.
you prepare a territory planning session, you want to spend more time on how to build it. That will be my coaching session, wherein I'll tell you the various constituents and I'll tell you how you think. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm saying, think about this, think about this, think about the challenge, think about how you're going to, how you're going to build that proposal. Think about why you're going to put every word on the proposal, but never the answer. So coaching that way for me is just asking the right questions, and that I think that's the most difficult part as well. Uh,
Actually, one thing really stood out in your examples is how you let your reps come to you. Because as managers, you do have a ringside seat to deals that are playing out, and you've had the experience of success, and that's why you've become a manager. And you're so keen on giving your version of it. But I think in a lot of these examples, what I saw was the reps coming to you, and asking you questions and you making them think. But the most important thing sometimes managers fail is they're very eager to give their version or
yes,
coach.
yes,
And sometimes the impact of coaching is much bigger if the reps come to you themselves, right?
in fact ties to the first thing that you said, right? First time managers, what's the mistake that people make? The same thing. It's a little beautiful when you talk about it in a way that you are an excellent AE, and somewhere usually in organizations the way it has worked, right, through probably years of the corporate molding, you become a great rep, then you get considered for manager,
Yeah.
right? But I see, I don't see a bridge over there, right? Being a great rep does not mean you'll be a great manager.
Yeah.
That's why, it's a complete change. You use your AE skills to help people, but 95% of your job is not that. 95% of your job is, how am I going to make this entire team successful? Like my father had once shared this excerpt with me, and it has stayed with me through my life, stating that when you become a frontline manager, Think about a fact that you are responsible probably for 7 or 8 people. And when you say responsible, you add a little more depth to, there's a lot more. Depending on how you guide them, how you help them realize that probably being in sales is for them or not, or being in the company is for them or not. You have a contribution to a decision that changes that person's life. And I think that fills me with a lot of it, sometimes overwhelms, but I know that this it's important what I do, right? I can make an impact. And through the companies that we work in, especially sales, when there is a monetary aspect to it as well, you definitely can make a major impact to a rep if the rep is coached well. So
That's awesome. I think your father's advice is so telling. You have to wear that responsibility well, right? And as a great segue, my next question is: how do you deal with reps that are constantly underperforming?
in the entire scheme of things, it is an inevitable that there will be people who are probably constantly underperforming. And I hope we don't reach the stage where it is constantly, because correction needs to happen before that. The same question that you asked, right? If they are constantly underperforming, one is you need to be absolutely, as a manager, you need to be brutal to yourself, stating that is this underperforming, is it a skill issue or a will issue,
Yeah,
right? If it's a skill issue, there is a time that I can put to it, stating that cool, I'll solve it. We'll undergo those PEPs and everything. There'll be a coaching program, whatever you do that we can solve it. But if it's a skill issue, more often than not, it is better to kind of part ways with a rep, with a will issue. The reason is because your team is as strong as the weakest link. I truly believe that, right? If it's a will issue, then probably have a straight on chat with the rep and state that, hey, this is something that is not working. And one of the best advices I have gotten in my life is, whatever feedback or whatever you are telling the rep, please document it. And I need to thank HRs for this. HRs always say, document feedback, document the feedback. I used to think of it as a process of, I'm talking to him, why am I supposed to? No, because if that person actually decides to turn a new leaf, right? Your feedback, which is documented, is what is going to help him with his next steps of trying to turn a new leaf, right? But if it's a will issue, coming back to the question, if it's a will issue, probably give it probably a month, and then have a straight heart to heart conversation stating that maybe the company is not the best fit for you,
yeah,
right? And I think sales teaches us one thing. So, and I keep repeating this to all of our AEs, that whenever you hear a no, the no is not for you. The no is to the proposal that you have taken or the request that you've made. That is a no, which is perfectly fine.
yeah.
The same can extrapolate to employees as well. Maybe you are a good employee, right? But maybe just that the company is not right for these particular skills that you have. So it's better to part ways, right?
Absolutely,
That's
and
the will issue part of it.
that's so well put, right? There are so many examples, peers of ours who have been may not have been successful at that point of time at that particular company, who've gone on to build great sales careers, leadership careers, and these examples are all around us. So
Absolutely.
you've
Absolutely.
explained that really well. Okay, now we move slightly towards you, right? You have had 5 great years as a frontline manager. As you think about the next phase of your career, what are some of the muscles you're excited to build on in the next stage?
One of the things that probably is most important is going to be um, number crunching from a segment building perspective. Like
Okay.
what we as sales managers, or the next job is going, like probably it's a director or whatever that is, right? We'll always get is, in Gartner they used to use the word corporate objective. What's the corporate objective? The corporate objective will be that X and YZ company wants to grow 20%, 25% next year. Then we had those mission critical priorities that would come to various functions, which is
Yeah.
sales, engineering, product. So by the time it comes to sales, usually what you're going to hear is, the company has to grow 20%, which means that in sales this year, our numbers are going to increase at least by, let's say, 20, 21% to align with company goals, right? That's the brief that probably my super boss will get. Then he will break it down further to us, stating that these are the segments that belong commercial, strategic. enterprise. Out of that 21% growth, commercial is going to give me X amount of $1 million, strategic is going to give me Y, and then Z, right? We get it this way. But now, once we've got these percentage numbers, how am I going to break this up into the five teams that are working in commercial? How am I going to take care of how many people in seat? How am I going to take care of if attrition hits? Where do I pick my next candidate from? Which means that am I going to build a pipeline as well? And the more deeper you go into it, you realize that there are so many factors, right? Which means that I have to speak to probably sales ops to decide what the spiffs are going to roll out to the quarter in the last quarter, because when new quarter starts, spiffs are supposed to be live, right?
Yeah.
I also need to discuss with sales ops in terms of how is the VCB going to be in my variable compensation pay. Are we going to put any kind of multipliers? What's the kind of behavior that we want to instill in my sales org? Okay, if multi-year is going to be a very important part of the company, because the company is looking at, you know reducing churn rates, right? Which means that my renewals are going to be right up there, right? My multi-years are going to be right up there. I want to sign long-term contracts with my customers. Am I going to make it a part of a VCP first, or am I going to make it a part of my spiff first? Spiff is when you want to change behavior short term.
Yeah.
Okay, this change it. When it is a part of your VCP, it means that it's a part of how you operate, right? Because what you're going to take home is attached to that multi-year now. So if you do X amount of multi-year, accelerator kicks in, and you'll get paid at the end of the year. Wow, right?
Yeah.
So if you break it up this way, the next level has so many various people that I need to speak to, need to talk to, need to figure out how to break that corporate objective that my CEO has, how to break my mission critical priority, how to speak to all of these people, which is the CSM team gets involved, then my BDRs get involved. How much of pipe is my BDR going to contribute? Then you'll have to speak to the director of the BDR to negotiate. Hey, listen, I want this amount of pipe from you. I'll do this amount of business. He's going to say exact things. So the number of people that you speak to before you actually lay the strategy, coming back to our understanding the systems process,
Yeah.
that part is probably what I'm most excited about, and this is something that I really really want to do. So that's where I'm going to build my muscle.
Excellent. And for everyone, VCP would be variable commission plan.
Variable compensation pay commission plan, same thing, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Good luck. Good luck for these muscles that you are going to build.
Thank you.
Could it be slightly nostalgic? What are some of the leaders you've looked up to, whether they're inside or outside of sales, and maybe a couple of traits or behaviors that you admire about them?
One of the most important, I've had the very good fortune of working with managers who inspire me, or had the good fortune of working with managers who have actually as I've looked up to, right? Right from fresh out of MBA, right from that place to my first job at Tata Interactive Systems. I had the good fortune of working with a gentleman by the name of Kumar Vikrant. He was my first sales boss, my first quota, and I think the thing that I loved is I think he led with trust as well, right? Usually we have managers who are very, if you're going on your first two sales calls or three sales calls, till I have the confidence that you're able to do well, I will accompany you. It does put a lot of pressure, but I think with Kumar it was that he gave me the freedom, right? He said that great, you've figured out a contact, you've got a meeting, good, all right, discuss with me what you're going to talk. You go and talk to the customer, right? That kind of put me into the habit of discussing a deal with my rep before getting onto the call, figuring out what roles you play,
Hmm.
what am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do, what are you supposed to say, what's the outcome that we want from the call. So
Nice.
this I got from Kumar, right? And I'll forever be grateful. From there, when I moved to LinkedIn, I worked with Minakshi Indra, and I think that's been a transformative time for me. Um, I think she understood me, and I say this because when I was a rep, when my manager understood me, I used to operate from a state of complete confidence, right? My manager understands what triggers me, my manager understands what excites me. She knew that I loved reading about not only probably the LinkedIn products well and all that, but reading about the prospects that I'm going to meet into. I used to love that part, figuring out, okay, who am I going to meet? What is that person? What will make him successful? Interests and everything, right? So she understood that part. And not a very long answer, but I'll just try to make it very short. The best thing about Minakshi was that she used to hold you accountable for every full stop on a particular slide. She would ask you, why is it there? Why? Constantly ask you till you give the right answer. Not the answer she wants to hear, but give you the right answer, right? We were meeting a CHRO of a pharmaceutical company, and I had put a lot of numbers on a slide. She knew I was preparing and everything. She said, Shashank, what is this slide? Like, because she liked those clean slides. I was like, I know the person is he loves data. He would want to see these metrics. Let the slide be this way, Meenakshi. She said two, three cross questions, of course. But the last thing she said is, are you sure? I said, yeah. She said, okay, let's go for it. To my luck, on that particular slide, I led the slide with sitting there, so and so, I know you like data, so I'm presenting it this way. And he said, I love this slide. Thank you. I have the answers for this. And during this entire meeting, my manager, Minakshi, is constantly writing in her diary. And you're like, oh my God, how is this going? I don't know. This constant thing. But when we finished that, when we came, I think that conversation, the one thing she said was, nailed it. I love how you stuck by your conviction. Great. And then the relationship just transformed after that. From her, you get the trust, but validate. That's the
Correct.
point, right?
Correct.
From there, moved to Gartner. Had the good fortune of working with you, right? And from you, I think it was just passion, right? In certain meetings when you've gone to probably Chennai and everything, I think the only thing left for you was to you go to the guy and say karma sign, it's that way. That was the only thing that probably that was left. But what I used to learn from that is that if you have passion and you really know what the other guy his challenges are, and you bring things together and everything, like tone, how you talk, the words that you use, your body language, right? It makes so much of a difference. No one likes someone speaking this way. You need that. And also your input on figure out who the guy is better, figure out how we are solving, what are we solving for. And I think in probably our easy conversation, you said, who cares about what Gartner does? You tell him how Gartner will solve for him. Those are some of the things that stuck. So right, this. And I think that was my Gartner point. And now at BrowserStack, I had the good fortune of working with Tariq earlier, and then now my current boss Sambit. And these were my bosses when I've become the manager for the first time, right? The first. So it were new roles for me. It were very new role for me. But the freedom of running things, obviously they keep things in check. Like if the overall is good, like even I think they also think from, okay, two three check boxes, but everything else is fine. The
Yeah.
overall is good, complete freedom to work the way you want to work. And I think my current boss, Sambit as well, he loves coaching through giving responsibility, right? On a call, Shashank has better information from me. Why don't you ask him? That's like, wow, man. Like my boss trusts me. That gets you in a place where you need to be more prepared. So that kind of fires in. So I think various, interventions at various times of lives by the people I work with. Forever grateful, but this would be the little nostalgia part.
Awesome. And that's a great place for us to wrap this wonderful conversation up. I'm going to ask you one question. What's the kindest thing someone has ever done for you?
Wow, that's a toughie. I've not thought about this at all. Let's say from a professional front, if I had to think about.
It doesn't have to be professional.
Okay, cool. Well, on a personal level, I think the kindest thing that anyone would have done for me was my father. My father, he had certain values that he instilled, but he let me make mistakes, and he kind of uh, helped me be the man that I want to be. I think that was very kind. Uh, you know, I've seen various other places where the controlled environments and everything is regulated, but for me, that would be that if he could, he's allowed me to be the person that I want to be. Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer. Shashank, before we go, where can people find or follow you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. As you've said, I work at BrowserStack. LinkedIn, just hit me up, Shashank Subramanian. Uh, Probably a message would be great because it would give me some context in terms of how or why you want to get in touch with me. But that's where you'll find me.
Awesome. Shank, I really enjoyed our conversation. What's come across is the rigor and the process that you've used to drive your growth, and not just yours, your companies and your reps' growth. And uh, what everyone will see is the empathy at which you operate on. Thank you so much for your time
No,
today.
thank you so much, Karthik, for having me here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You've taken me down memory lane. You've asked me. I think this is, and thank you. This is a question that I'm gonna probably use a lot. I'm telling you now only, which is, what's the kindest thing that someone has done to you? It's a question that makes someone like really ponder. It's not an easy
I
answer.
It is. It's. I mean, we'd love to take credit for coming up with this question, but I think Soumya's sent a podcast where they ask this question at the very end. So this is a question that we love to ask as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. One, two, one, two. Don't stop.